Nico Iamaleava was number 6 in the latest QB rankings per that SEC podcast. Now they're going to defend their work. A very special guest talking all things Tennessee and, of course, SEC football ahead of SEC Media Days. All that and more. It's Tuesday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Tuesday edition of Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here. And, of course, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. Everydayers going to answer a lot of your questions in segment 3 of today's mailbag show. But first, Michael Bratton, SEC Mike's going to join the show for segments 1 and 2, talking all things quarterbacks around the SEC, power rankings around the SEC, expectations for Tennessee in 2024. SEC Mike, good friend of the show. And we're going to have to get Cousin Shane on here at some point in time as well. That's coming up here in a matter of moments in segments 1 and 2. Thank you guys so much for joining us here. And big thanks to Game Time for making this show possible. Download the Game Time app, create an account, put in the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase, again, by downloading the Game Time app, putting in that promo code LOCKEDONCollege. We are absolutely free wherever you listen, wherever you watch your podcast. Please subscribe to Locked On Vols, the YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcast. We're getting geared up for Tennessee football coming up in a matter of weeks, and that's when the show really hits its peak, and we need to get it in front of more and more and more Tennessee fans. So tell a friend, word of mouth. Let them know you're an everydayer. They'll say, what's that mean? You let them know right here on Locked On Vols. Without further ado, the host of that SEC podcast, co-host of that SEC podcast, SEC Mike, Michael Bratton. Mike, you unveiled your 2024 SEC quarterback rankings a couple of days ago, and you projected them. You know, everybody can make it their own, and I like that aspect of it. You projected them on where you think they'll end up. And you have Tennessee's quarterback Nico Iamaleava coming in 6th, behind a lot of established guys in Brady Cook, Jackson Dart, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, and then there's Nico, and Nico's in front of some guys who have been established starters, and Graham Mertz there at 7, and a guy that, Connor Wagman, who's done some good things, but, has a hard time staying healthy. And so I have no issue with where Nico is right there. Kind of where do you think, what are your projections, I guess, of Nico year 1 starting quarterback full-time for Tennessee?
Yeah, well, obviously I think that's the biggest question for Tennessee this year, because if he's awesome, like some people think he will be, Tennessee should make the college football playoff. They should, it's interesting. I think, Eric, if you ask most SEC teams, all right, you got Georgia, you got Bama, and you got Oklahoma. If you win one of those, as long as you win the rest of your games, which you're a big favorite in all the rest of them, can't have any slip-ups. But if you win one of those, there's a good shot you're going to the college football playoff. You win 2 of them, you're essentially a lock. I think most teams would take that. So now, can they beat Alabama? Can they win at Oklahoma? I don't think anybody can really beat Georgia and Athens. I'll just be honest with you. But can they do that if Nico is what Joe Milton was last year? They may lose all those games. So I think he'll be much better. I think he's a better fit for this. And just in what brief action we've seen from him, I think you could tell his football IQ is off the charts, his fit for the system. Your audience knows everything they need to know about Josh Heupel and what he can do with a quarterback, even in a first year. They put up really good production. So, again, I would probably put even Nico a little bit higher if I knew what we were going to get from him. But the guys that I did put in front of him I think are fairly established in this league.
Yeah, no doubt. And I have, when I see lists it's July, you're going to see a lot of rankings and lists and called list season for a reason. I have no issue with Nico being behind those guys because, again, like you said, I've seen Milroe go out there and do it. I've seen Carson Beck and playing behind that offensive line and everything Georgia has to offer, and Jackson Dart and Brady Cook with Luther Burden and so on and so forth. Now, when you look at this quarterback class overall, two new teams in going from 14 to 16. You compare it to what we saw in the SEC last year. Obviously, it's not touching what the SEC had a couple of years ago in terms of the quarterback class. Strength of the quarterback class for the league this year, in your opinion?
I think it's absolutely strong because, I did a video breakdown. It's over an hour long. Go check it out on that SEC podcast where we talk about these rankings. But, 4 through 10, honestly, you could make an argument, I think, for any of those guys in any order. And I wouldn't really critique it too much. So, again, that's not you. Maybe you could say that about a quarterback conference with weak quarterbacks too, but I'm saying it as a strength because I think all the way down to Jackson Arnold, who I have number 10, to number 4, which is I'm trying to remember my old list here for a second, but I mean, again, you put those guys in any order. I think, obviously I'm catching a ton of heat for Brady Cook, number 1, Jackson Dart, number 2, and number 3, Carson Beck. I think those guys are kind of going to be in a league of their own, so to speak, this season. And again, this is projecting. This is very confusing to people that it always racks their. I used to put it on the graphic. I used to put it in the tweet. They don't even pay attention to it. So this is projecting maybe by like December, when the regular season's in the books, who's going to have the best years. And I just think Missouri and Ole Miss, I think they're going to be phenomenal on offense this year. Now, their defenses, I'm not saying they're going to be elite, but again, I think they're going to be capable of scoring 40, 50 points per game in a lot of their games this year. So I think they're going to put up video game numbers. And again, if this is a NFL draft list, Carson Beck, sure, put him number 1. That's fine. But quite frankly, Eric, I mean, I think he feasted on a schedule that was one of the weakers in the entire SEC last year. And then when the pressure got ramped up against Alabama, he didn't have that great a game and had a turnover that cost his team 3 points, and they lost that game. So I'm not ready to anoint Carson Beck as the second coming of Peyton Manning like some people are.
Even you mentioned, of course, the top 3 league of their own, 4 through 10. You can go in a number of different ways. Even 11 through 16, there's a lot of unproven commodities there. Some new guys into the SEC. I recognize that. I think Sellers can eventually be pretty good. I think there's going to be a learning curve there for sure. I think Vandergriff at Kentucky is the perfect marriage, in my opinion, what I've seen from him and the style of quarterback that he is. I'm not high on Peyton Thorne. I don't think he's very good. We'll see what Blake Shapen is. Of course, we knew what he did at Baylor. And then, Diego Pavia. Stats, again, you're going from New Mexico State to the SEC. I recognize that. But on paper, he's pretty good quarterback. I think I'm with you, top to bottom. We'll learn more about these quarterbacks, the bottom third of the list, as the season goes along. But I think overall the strength of the league's pretty strong at the quarterback position. And I think a guy like Nico, could jump up into that top 4 if he is who we believe he is. Now, again, there could be a learning curve there for Nico as well. It's, Iowa's defense was good, but, there's going to be a lot more versatility and stuff from week to week that Nico's going to have to go through playing in this first true road game at Oklahoma. How do you handle the environment in Athens later in the season? But I like the class, and I do think that, again, kind of going back to what you said, if Nico is who we think that he is, man, he can be up there contending with the Cooks and the Darts and the Becks when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and I also think it's fair. I mean, I get it. Tennessee fans, we get excited every year. Feels like 98, right? This is going to be the team is the year, so we don't focus on what could go wrong. But, that's an excellent case in point. First true road game, Oklahoma. I think that's a coin flip game. What if Nico has a mistake or two that cost Tennessee that game? And we're just completely overlooking NC State, which Tennessee probably should win that game, but that's one. Let's say even in a scenario where they beat NC State, they should beat NC State, but they lose to Oklahoma, and then they lose to Florida, which I mean, it would not be the most bizarre Florida-Tennessee loss. Let's call it what it is, because we all know that series. But all of a sudden, this guy that has been anointed, that everybody loves, he's going to start facing some real heat, fair or not. And it may not even be his fault that they lose to Florida, but it'll start, and that's when you find out what you have in a quarterback, particularly a young quarterback, if they're up to it. When everything, again, they're supposed to be 5-star, they're supposed to be elite, competing for Heisman's. How does he handle adversity? I'm not aware of any adversity Nico's ever faced because he's so good in his young playing career, but it's going to happen. Believe me. But Tennessee guy, I've been through it all. There's going to be some crazy stuff happening. How does he respond to that? I'm not saying that he won't be able to respond, but we just don't know. We could sit here and say he's going to be the best quarterback Josh Heupel ever has, and there's a very good chance he is. But until he actually does it, there is that lingering doubt for me.
Yeah, I mean, rubber's going to meet the road here soon. It's been years and years and years of hype, and no pun intended. And, Nico's looked good in mop-up duty, and then his first start, and that was awesome. That was great. But, I mean, even with how great it was a one-off. We needed to see it week after week after week, and so we're gonna get that opportunity this fall. Want to see about our friends over at Game Time. You download the Game Time app, create an account there, put in the promo code LockedOnCollege, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the Game Time app, promo code LockedOnCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. What is Game Time? Well, there's events in your area. Sure, there's sporting events we love, Lindsey Nelson Stadium, Neyland Stadium, Thompson-Boling Arena at the Food City Center. There's places to watch the Vols this upcoming year, right? Summer's now, nearing the halfway point, and sports are going to be returning on campus. But there's also comedy shows. There's concerts. There's theater, Tennessee Theater, Bijou Theater, all that on Gay Street here in downtown Knoxville, or wherever you are watching this podcast from. There are events in your area. Pretty much all these events you can find a ticket for by using the Game Time app. And why use that Game Time app? All-in prices, views of your seats, the lowest price guarantee, where Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket in the same section on another app. Loads and loads of reasons why you need to check out the Game Time app, and you can do it today by downloading that Game Time app, creating an account, put in the promo code LockedOnCollege, again, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today, last-minute ticket, lowest price, guaranteed. Looking at your power rankings here, and just kind of at a glance, we don't have to go specific in all of this. I mean, Georgia, Ole Miss, Missouri, Texas, Alabama, Tennessee are your top 6. Would imagine that at least 4 of those teams are going to be in the college football playoff, which is kind of based on how the 12 teams going to work, which puts, Tennessee, Oklahoma in that 6-7 range kind of in the picture, looking in. We'll see what can happen. You follow that up with A&M at 8. First-year head coach Mike Elko, of course, knows the environment, knows the program and everything. LSU there at number 9 after losing a Heisman Trophy quarterback. Florida at 10 might surprise me a little bit there because you have them in front of Kentucky. Auburn, it's still going to take a while for the rebuild, in my opinion, for Hugh Freeze there at 12. Arkansas, South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt rounding out your rankings. How many playoff teams do you see in these power rankings here, and what's the ceiling, I guess, for a team like Tennessee? And I know a lot of that has to do with what we've been talking about, Nico. If he hits, it's high. If he doesn't, well, we'll see what happens.
Right. I think those top 6, they're not all going to make it. I don't think the SEC is going to get that many in the playoff. Again, that is another popular topic, just with the expanded playoff. No one really knows how this is going to all shake out. It's all guesswork. But in my mind, those top 6 are the teams that are going to be fighting for it at the end of November to make the college football playoff from the SEC. But some very interesting teams right behind them, like Oklahoma, A&M, LSU. Those teams, I think, can get there, but in my mind, they're a notch below the top 6, so to speak. So could an Alabama fall? Certainly. And it'll be one of those 3 that steps up. Could a Tennessee fall? Possibly. And then you'd have one of those 3. So, I would go as far as, I think, 9 that not realistically could make the playoff, but could be in the race for about half the season. But yeah, for those first 6, and I know a lot of people are not willing to go this far, Eric, but heck, that's what I do. I like to say bold things, but I think Ole Miss and Missouri are primed to maybe be the best they've ever been. Not, maybe not annually, but I'm just talking this year.
Yeah.
But how will they handle that kind of pressure? How will they handle that expectation? Because I talk to Ole Miss people, 9-3 is not good enough for them this year, and it shouldn't be. But 9-3 is like the second best record they've ever had in their existence. They've been playing football for 100 years. So how do they handle that level of pressure? How does Missouri handle that pressure? Everyone's telling them what a gift of a schedule they got, which they did. But what happens if they trip up early to maybe like an A&M? They're on the road at A&M. All of a sudden, doubt could linger in, and all of a sudden you're overhyped, and people like me are idiots. We never should have had you as number 3 in the SEC. So, those are questions that have to be asked as well.
I look at this, and you see Missouri, and of course you got Luther Burden, Brady Cook. I get all that. You lose Cody Schrader. I mean, quarterback's best friend, football evolves, but quarterback's best friend still the run game. And boy, he was dynamic. I'm intrigued to see how much that hurts the offense or Brady Cook, and we won't know that after week 1. We'll have to check back in week 4, week 5. And then, of course, Ole Miss. All the potential in the world. And, of course, we know about all the transfer portal additions. How's that locker room? When Ole Miss hits adversity, how does Ole Miss respond? I'm intrigued to see that as well. So many different storylines we're going to look at. And, obviously, on this podcast, we're focused on Tennessee. But SEC Media Days coming up next week in Dallas. I know you and cousin Shane are going to be down there having a good time. What do we have to look forward to over on that SEC podcast throughout SEC Media Days and the weeks that follow leading into fall camps around the country?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a blast down there. So, basically, I mean, it's wild. Basically, I just roam the halls. Eric knows he's been down there a couple times, and if I see someone I know, I'm like, hey, come hang out with us. Come speak with us. So, just literally grabbing anybody and everybody that is willing to come to our table. Shane and I both. I don't know if we're going to do it together or individually, but we'll be back on Paul Feinbaum's show while we're down there. And a lot of the coaches and a lot of the teams have been receptive to saying they're sending people over to come speak with us. So I don't know if that's because we're getting a little bit bigger or if that's because no one's going to make the trek down to Dallas except us idiots. So I don't know, but I don't care. As long as we get some good interviews, that's what it's all about. But yeah, I don't know about you. I mean, I get it now. We do this like year round, so it never really goes away. But growing up, this is when SEC football was real to me. It's media days. It's right around the corner. It's when people that are not as hyper focused as you and I. It's when a lot of them start to tune in, get fired up for some SEC football. So I legitimately, we say it every year. I think this is the truth. I think this is going to be the best year ever with new teams in the SEC, Oklahoma, Texas, expanded playoff, getting away with divisions. I thought the divisions were kind of foolish the way they did them for so many years. And the return of the video game, I mean, what more could you want? This is going to be one heck of a college football season.
I might as well just drag this out to 2 segments here. Let me ask you this, bold predictions and all that. Which coaches do not survive this year? I could see Clark Lee getting fired, but then again, it's like, I mean, what more can you do at Vanderbilt, right? Billy Napier, I don't know where you stand on this, but there's just no way. There's no way he survives that schedule. Sam Pittman, we all love Sam Pittman. We're all rooting for Sam, not Tennessee fans on week 5 or 6, whatever week it is. We're all rooting for Sam Pittman to stay, but that's going to be tough for him, especially when they brought in someone that could potentially replace him. Which coach, and again, Shane Beamer as well. He's fallen on hard times this past year. Which coaches do you think are on the hot seat and will have to coach for their lives essentially at their respective school this year?
Yeah, I mean, all the guys you mentioned are kind of the obvious candidates. I'm a lot higher on Florida than a lot of people. I think they're going to be pretty good. I legitimately think they're a top 25 team this year.
Legitimately good in terms of like 8-4, 7-5, kind of where you at there?
Well, that's the problem. They could be top 25 and go 6-6. You know what I mean? Because the schedule is just such a gauntlet. So, I mean, I'm probably at best 7-5. But I have people I talk to that think they're going 2-10. I mean, I think that's a little crazy. But again, if they lose week 1 to Miami, if they lose week 3, A&M, they're hosting A&M. You have to win both those games if you're Billy Napier. If you lose either one of them, if they lose both of them, they might as well just fire them that day. You know what I mean? So the wheels could come off. And I know I just said 2-10 is ridiculous, but it probably happens if they lose those 2 games. They should win those 2. So Billy Napier certainly is one to watch, but I'll throw one out that you didn't even reference there that I think is really, there's a fine line here, and if things go sideways for him, I think it would be best for all parties to move on, and that's Mark Stoops at Kentucky. I mean, A lot of people, we kind of forget so quickly what happened, but last year, I believe they were like 5-0, they were top 20-ish. Then they got their doors blown off by Georgia, and he comes out here and says, "Well, y'all need to pony up so we can have better players." That from everything I've been told, that continues to haunt him, and it didn't help that they lost damn near every game to close out. They beat Louisville in the rivalry game, that saved him, but then what does he do? Then he tries to take the Texas A&M job. Yep. So, there is he is not a fan favorite at the time being. And if they miss a bowl, which they're another one, we're doing away with divisions, it's really going to hurt them because they're not catching Mississippi State annually out of the West, and they're not going through the East schedule. Instead, they play Ole Miss. They play Texas. I think there's one other one that is really tough. I mean, obviously Tennessee at Tennessee. So a lot of games. Basically, every road game is losable. And if they lose week 2, South Carolina goes to Lexington, that'll be my – I'll predict it now. Mark Stoops getting fired.
So many different storylines, so many different players, 12-team college football playoffs happening this year, no divisions, 2 new teams in the SEC. Man, I'm excited. We live in this excitement all year round, but like you said, man, I mean, you got SEC Media Days next week, and I got my football. You can't see it in the screen. I got my Football Time magazine for nostalgia purposes. I mean, I'm ready to roll. So, Locked On Vols every single day, and of course that SEC podcast, you and Cousin Shane do an awesome job. And as you mentioned earlier, I mean, you guys just continue to grow, and you're going to piss a lot of people off. You're going to make a whole lot of friends, but when you cover a conference the way you guys do and do such a great job, it's there's never a dull moment, man. So I'll be looking forward to y'all's coverage down in Dallas and obviously throughout the rest of the football season.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Eric. And real quick, one thing I forgot to mention, I want to relay to your audience here.
Yeah.
I just visited Norman, Oklahoma for them officially joining the SEC. And if you were considering going to that game, first SEC game for Tennessee and Oklahoma, week 4 of the season, I can't recommend it enough. They're really great people out there in the campus and the setting. There's all kinds of restaurants and bars within walking distance of the stadium. I highly recommend anybody that is on the fence to make that trip. I think they'll have a real blast going.
Should be fun. And of course, goes without saying how big of a football game that is for Tennessee and for Oklahoma, as it is the SEC opener. All right, SEC Mike, that SEC podcast, as always, man, really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Really do appreciate SEC Mike for jumping on the show and giving me about 18 minutes of his time. Really, really great stuff, guys. Can't thank you enough for being an everydayer here, but man, what they do over at that SEC podcast, check it out. They're good guys. Him and Cousin Shane, they do an excellent job. So you can check that out when you're done checking out this show every single day. Your first listen, your first watch right here on Locked On Vols. All right, time to get into your mailbag questions and trying to answer all the ones that I saw that was submitted for this week. If I do miss one, I as always, I do apologize. Neil on YouTube wants to know about the backup center. Yeah, that's a position battle, if you will. Not one that I necessarily wanted to highlight because it's technically considered a backup, but there's a question that's coming up later in the mailbag that kind of ties this one in. But anyway, backup center right now, I think if the season started tomorrow, it would be Dane Davis. Very much like an Ollie Lane situation, very much like a Jerome Carvin situation, which is not great. It's not ideal because Cooper Mays is going to be gone. This is last year, right? I mean, Tennessee's got to find an answer there at center. But Vyson Lang is one that's very much in that conversation. William Satterwhite's in that conversation. When Nick Moore gets here, potentially he can be in that conversation, another Jefferson County product. How about them Patriots? Football commit this summer, baseball commit this summer, and all in the span of a couple weeks. Dumpling Valley turned out great athletes. I mean, clearly I was one of them as well. Not even close to this magnitude. But, Nick Moore potentially could be the future at center. You've got Vyson Lang, you've got William Satterwhite, and really you've got Dane Davis right now. So that's kind of what Tennessee's working with at current standing. We'll go to Zach. Tuesday question: who becomes the bigger rival for Tennessee over the years, Oklahoma or Texas? Says, I think it's Texas with the whole UT thing and both teams wearing orange. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, don't get me wrong. Right now, the national media, the college football world is trying to smack Oklahoma, Josh Heupel, Oklahoma, Josh Heupel, Oklahoma, Josh Heupel. And guys, I hope Josh Heupel's here for 20 years, 30 years. I hope Josh Heupel becomes the longest tenured head coach here at Tennessee until he retires. You know why? Because that means Tennessee's very, very successful. And that means, that's bringing something that's stability that we haven't had since, Philip Fulmer really has been the head coach here at Tennessee. And, of course, Johnny Majors before him and so on and so forth. So I'm all for Josh Heupel being here as long as he can be here. However, climate of college football coaching, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of patience there. Josh Heupel, for example, making $9 million a year. 2 losing seasons, and Josh Heupel's job is very much in jeopardy. You know what I'm saying? And that's the case for anywhere in the country. So the whole Oklahoma-Tennessee rivalry, I think that's overplayed. I don't think that's really it's a Josh Heupel going home this year to Oklahoma with his new team that he considers home now in Tennessee and trying to win a football game. That's the outside persona. I like Texas as well for reasons you just mentioned. Orange, who's the real shade of orange? UT, who's the real UT? don't have to remind you guys again, history lesson, Tennessee was a college before Texas was a state. So, is what it is, right? And you had the university athletic director, or maybe even the president for Texas a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, saying that, Texas is the real UT, undisputed. Okay, whatever. you got to say that. That's your job. But again, let's open up a history book, shall we? I love the Tennessee-Texas battle. I think that that could turn into a really, really good rivalry. I enjoy that. That's what I am certainly rooting for sure. We will continue on here with your mailbag questions. We'll go over to the Locked On Vols channel. Had a couple of you guys submit one over there. Bruce submitted one. He says, rating our backup players. Should someone go down, who are the top 5 backup players that are, in your opinion, ready to play? What 5 positions are not ready and we need to pray for? So this kind of ties into what we were talking about with the center position. As we've seen the last 3 years, if Cooper Mays is hurt, man, Tennessee's offense takes a hit. It does. And Jerome Carvin and Ollie Lane were guards. They unselfishly slid down because it was the best for the team, and they did a fine job, but they're not Cooper Mays. And Vyson Lang, is he ready to come in right now? Is William Satterwright ready to come in right now? I don't know. If season started today, I would say no. Maybe a month long of camp, and that changes. But certainly one that you put in the category of pray for would be center, of course. In terms of, top 5 backups, I don't know if I'd really rate him in top 5 in this order, because so much of football's rotational positions, right? Defensive line, 13 guys are going to play. So, there's a lot of those guys that won't be on the field for the very first defensive snap that are going to be playing a ton of. James Pierce, for example, majority of last year was not a quote-unquote starter, but he led the Leo position in total snap counts and obviously productions. You know what I'm saying? Like Joshua Joseph's a great quote-unquote backup player. Depending on if Bryson Eason starts at defensive tackle, or Omar Norman-Lott or Amari Thomas, very much would be considered a backup player because they're not there for start number or snap number 1. Same at the strong side defensive end, Dominic Bailey, Tyree West. Only one of those guys are going to be out there at the same time. So, what I'm kind of saying. And then same for linebacker. Whether it's Arian Carter or Jeremiah Thielander, whichever one's not in the game with Keenan Peely, I got faith in them. I like the other ones for sure. On the offensive side, everyone healthy, Squirrel White in the slot, Brew McCoy on one side. Is it going to be Dante Thornton? Is it going to be Chris Bradsell? Is it going to be Mike Matthews? You got a lot of quote-unquote backup level players that you feel really, really good about. But for the positions, the groups that I would worry about a little bit, at least at the start, center, running back for sure, especially with Cam Seldon being banged up to start the year, at least right now entering camp. Safety, those are the 3, and tight end, because you don't really know what you have in tight end right now because it is brand spanking new. Good question, Bruce. Really, really do appreciate that question. We will go over here to @_Cainer, where you can follow me on Twitter or X, and of course send in all your questions each and every week as well. We'll go to Braden, excuse me. Braden says, has it been a big adjustment for you being on both sides in media covering Tennessee's success and struggles in football? Not really. The biggest adjustment for me was, professionally to date, was when we switched from our previous platform, VolQuest being, over to the On3 network. And what came with that move was a lot of things from a SEO technical standpoint. VolQuest, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to downgrade all the other outlets and friends of mine that cover Tennessee as well that I see on a daily basis. I work for VolQuest. I think we're the best of the best. I think that our team is the absolute best in the market and nobody comes close. That's just my opinion, and I'm proud of it. We take pride in our work. But from like an SEO technical standpoint, how to run a website, page views, not clickbait, but getting page views and all that type of stuff that keeps the lights on, you know what I'm saying? We learned as a group, and myself included, we learned a whole lot of that when we went over to On3, and that has been the biggest adjustment for me. As far as Tennessee when they were good, and that coincided with Tennessee being really, really good. As far as Tennessee football being good and bad, no, nothing changes. You still give all the coverage possible, right? You're still, just because they're good doesn't mean you write more stories. You still give the same amount of coverage. You're still spending, 3 to 4 hours after the game is over in the press box finishing up your work, and then the next day going back and watching the tape and writing columns and all that type of, that stuff doesn't change. The interaction with fans does, for sure. Sometimes the traffic on a website or a podcast like this increases. The rule of thumb in radio was things are great ratings-wise if everything's great, and everything's bad. It's not like you're rooting for bad, but ratings-wise, people want to tune in to complain, to bad word that starts with a B, or they want to turn in and say, man, I love this team. This team is great. I love this team. But in the end, none of that really changes. Hope that answers. Oh, you had one more question. Hope that answers that portion of the question, Braden. I took a tour of Neyland this past week. What is it like in the media room on game days for you? Yeah, it's cool. Press box is neat. You walk in there, you got a seat assigned, and you got Wi-Fi, and you got sometimes you got food. Or every game you'll have some type of food that you can eat. Coffee, drinks, tons of water. There's an ice cream machine, or a ice cream cooler, I should say. I don't usually get into that, but there's been fights almost with media members getting into the ice cream cooler that I think is a little silly. So that's cool. That's upstairs, level 5 of the press box, if you will. That's technically considered the press box because that's where all of us press people are. Go down on the field. There's a media room, a media workroom where the photographers are. Down in the north end zone in the corner, the far corner. Cumberland side corner, and we work down there as well. But no, it's cool. It's awesome. Like 10-year-old Eric would be freaking out knowing what I'm doing today. I am certainly blessed, that is for sure. Let's go to my buddy Osborne. He says start bench cut, JG, Joe, or Justin Worley. You can look at this a couple different ways. Regardless, Joe Milton is the start. And I know Matthew, and I know he's not a Joe Milton fan, but 100% Joe Milton's the start of these three. If you gave me a healthy Jerry Garantano before he was broken in half, Garantano's absolutely could be the start for a lot of you guys, but he's the bench either way for me. And then Justin Worley's the cut. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory for sure. Rank the baseball uniforms from favorite to least. The ones they have now for me. Now they're going to be. The plan is to be getting a new rotational set for the upcoming season. We'll have more on that in the fall, I would imagine. But nonetheless, for me, the ones that I like the best, I like the black. And they just won a national championship in them, so it's hard not to like them. I like the black unis 1, dark mode. Number 2, I like the orange. Number 3, I like the whites. Number 4, I like the creams. I know a lot of people love the creams. Creams are a little heavy, though. Okay, and that's the, and the pinstripes are number 5 for me. And I love the pinstripes look, but they're heavy. And that's why these new uniform combinations are going to, be better and be lighter. And everybody's like, why would they wear black, dark mode in Omaha when it's so dang hot? Well, it's the lightest jersey they have, for one, and it looks cool. But 1 for me is dark mode, 2 is orange, 3 is the whites, 4 is cream, 5 is pinstripes, which I love the pinstripe look, and I'm pretty sure I've heard that they're going to have an alternate pinstripe in the new uniform allocations. I'm looking forward to that. And then number 6, and I can't stand the gray unis. I think that they're so ugly. So that is of the Tennessee baseball uniforms. That's how I'd rank them right now. Let's go to Jared. Jared says open-ended David Sanders. Might lose my mind if we miss out on another elite offensive tackle to another program again, in all capital letters. Have we done enough? Ohio State insiders think they're a lock to land him because they put more guys in the league and calling us a lesser program. How can this ever change for us? Well, it can change by landing David Sanders. I know he came out and said that he's going to commit, I believe, is it August the 19th. Have we done enough? I mean, Tennessee's done all that it possibly can, and he's been on campus countless times this spring into summer. He's really, really good friends with George McIntyre. He's made a home here, it feels like. He's comfortable here. He loves the coaches here. I would imagine to the same extent, at least, that's how it is Ohio State. I mean, it's Ohio State, Georgia, and Tennessee, but it's really Tennessee and Ohio State. This is this battle. Now, in the era of name, image, and likeness, you push that commitment date out there, start a fall camp, maybe there's an injury, maybe you get more desperate, maybe one team wants to make a bigger push. From a recruiting standpoint, for a guy like David Sanders, that was a smart move in my opinion. For Ohio State and Tennessee, you hate that because it's another month of this stuff. But we'll have to see, man. I know David Sanders would be a massive, massive get, but in order to change that narrative of people saying the Ohio State insiders saying Tennessee's a lesser program, that type of stuff, you got to land these type of guys, and we'll see if Tennessee does. Another one here from Jared. Are the undrafted free agents from this past year's draft on roster, or is that still TBA? I found an article shortly after the draft, and guys, I got to be honest with you, my job is to cover Tennessee. When players graduate, we cover their draft and their signings, but when they're on a professional, we don't pay attention as much because our job is obviously covering the Vols. But here's what happened immediately the days following the draft. I don't know if these guys have been cut or anything like that, but immediately following the draft, McCall and Castle signed with the Eagles. These are undrafted free agents. Jacob Warren with the Raiders. Actually, Jacob Warren was with the Patriots, I'm pretty sure. I don't know why this says Raiders. I'm pretty sure Jacob Warren was with the Patriots. Ramel Keaton, the Raiders. Aaron Beasley, the Seahawks. Gabe Jeudy-Lally, the Titans. Jeremiah Crawford, the Panthers. Jalen McCullough, the Rams. And D. Williams, the Seahawks. Those are 8 undrafted free agents that went along with the 3 that were drafted, and Joe Milton, Kamal Haddon, and, of course, Jalen Wright. That's what I have, the latest thing that I have right now. And the last question we're going to get into right now here on this mailbag show, and if I forgot your question, I do apologize. Alex says, thoughts on replacing Friends in Low Places with Copperhead Road at the end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter. The SEC, one of the great traditions in this league, is a couple years ago they started playing an anthem. League-wide, all teams started playing an anthem to begin the fourth quarter. And I love it. I love going on the road and hearing everybody's anthem, different song and all that. I think it's cool. I personally have nothing against Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks. I like Garth Brooks, but it's been on repeat since like 2018. It's time to retire it, in my opinion. I would say the same with any song, right? It's time to retire it. There was nothing like getting your brains beat in by Georgia or Alabama or Florida or whoever, heading in the fourth quarter, down by 20, down by 3 touchdowns, and Garth Brooks comes on the loudspeaker singing, "I got friends in low places." Yes, I know Tennessee's playing much better football now, but I think you need to reinvent yourself a little bit. I think we need to change that. That's just my opinion. Now, Dixieland Delight would be great, would be awesome in my opinion. Of course, that's what Tennessee played over the PA and the loudspeakers whenever Tennessee walked it off with that field goal over Alabama to break the streak and win in incredible fashion, 52-49 back in 2022. Dixieland Delight would be up there for me. Copperhead Road, as you mentioned, is a good one in my opinion. Doesn't make sense necessarily, but I know he mentions Johnson City, Tennessee, and of course this is Knoxville, but Wagon Wheel. I love Wagon Wheel. I love Wagon Wheel. I don't think that would ever happen, but selfishly, I love the song Wagon Wheel. I'd have a blast if that was played. I love, and this would never happen, I would assume this is what LSU's song is, but Colin Baton Rouge, love that song, but it would make no sense for Tennessee, so that's not going to happen. I think Copperhead Road makes the most sense in my opinion. I haven't heard anything. To my understanding, Friends in Low Places with Garth's going to stick and continue to be the song as far as I know, but I think it's time for a change-up for sure. So thoughts on replacing Copperhead or Friends in Low Places with Copperhead Road? 2 thumbs up for me. Sign me up for that. That's how I'd handle that. All right. That is going to do it here for your Tuesday edition of Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for being here. Thank you so much for sending in your questions, your comments, everything you guys had for us here on Locked On Vols. You can be an everydayer by tuning in tomorrow. And things about to heat up, guys. MLB draft's coming up next week. SEC Media Days is coming up next week. You've got the start of fall camp coming up at the end of this month. We're about to hit the prime session here of this podcasting season, and I can't wait for it. I couldn't do it without you guys being everydayers right here on Locked On Vols. You can watch us, listen to us, subscribe to us, download us, all that for free. It's completely free wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, Locked On Vols on the YouTube channel. Please hit that subscription there. Let's do it again tomorrow, guys. Can't thank you enough. Appreciate you guys, and have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.